Question that we have here. Our company just launched offices in Europe and Asia, but our ERG programs are still US focused. Oof, I hear that one a lot. How can ERGs transition from US based to global programs effectively while staying relevant to local cultures? This is a hefty question. Couple of things. I think let's talk about global ERGs. Someone just asked me this yesterday actually, so this is interesting to go into. A number of different factors I think go into having global ERGs. Thing number one, it's something that I see oftentimes pushed by executives, which is interesting. Pushing the ERGs to global, and maybe the thought is like that's how you're going to help to make the ERGs successful, um, is by pushing them to global. Anyway, what I've learned, even going overseas and talking to people, oftentimes when I do ERG summits, people will fly out folks from all different countries, and I'll get to talk to ERG leaders from different countries. Honestly, the need for community, which keep in mind, that's what ERGs are, communities. The need for community is not as strong outside of the US. Or I'm not going to say the need for community, but the yearning so bad for community that you're okay with corporate community is not nearly as strong outside of the US as I've learned. For instance, I was speaking to an ERG leader who was from the UK a bit ago, and they were telling me how there is a strong community feel just around like pub culture, going to a pub after, or even just like family time, like where that does not exist within the US, that form of community. Here, a lot of us, it's just so different. I don't want to generalize like American culture in general, but honestly, I do say that there's a different need for a community here in the US versus globally. And that's why oftentimes you won't see that same interest in ERGs outside of the US, because maybe that's genuinely not the problem that folks are having. If you're having low engagement in other areas outside of the US, maybe the issue is not that people need communities. Maybe that's not your engagement solution, that people want niche groups to engage in. And that's a little bit of a different train of thought for a lot of people, but it is a very realistic one. Um, so that's thing one that I want you to consider. Is that actually the problem that we're solving for? Where I will say, honestly, community is a solution here, oftentimes in American corporations when it comes to getting people engaged. But it's only going to work for people who, again, where community is a solution. Similar way of thinking about this. For instance, frontline employees, that's another one that comes up often. How do we engage them with ERGs? There's also less of a yearning for corporate community, for community so bad that you are cool with it within a corporate standpoint. And from like being a frontline employee, and I'm speaking from experience. This is not me speaking and pontificating on this, but I'm saying like very realistically, as someone who was a frontline employee for a good amount of time, even as I started as an ERG leader, and I'm also I'm very plugged in to frontline employees. Let's just say that all family, all friends, like most. I don't really have people that I haven't met like via ERGs. Outside of ERGs, like people that I'm friends with in general are not in the corporate space. So I oftentimes hear the very real perspective of how people not on the corporate side think about ERGs. And in all reality, it's like, why would I use unpaid hours to participate in another company thing? Like I literally talk to people all the time and I'm trying to tell them like, well, there's like professional development opportunities, and I'm telling you, it's not as tangible when you're a frontline. Where honestly, you're not even probably happy with your job. You have zero loyalty to your job oftentimes as well. Um, just the concept of doing something for the community or for the company, even though doing something is like it really benefits you to do it, but it's viewed as like, oh, I'm doing this thing that HR is telling me or whatever. No one really wants that. And I'm not going to say no one. So take everything with a grain of salt. All right. I hope you get what I'm saying here. But that's not what a lot of people, when you're a frontline employee, what you want. And oftentimes, as a frontline employee, you've already formed some type of community just trying to survive being frontline. Like, oftentimes, maybe that community could be like that community against your supervisor or your manager because you all hate them so much collectively. Like, that is a form of community, in a sense. Like, there's so many different like communities that exist just naturally for survival. And beyond that, when it comes to a corporate community, again, it just doesn't translate as well. For the visible affinities that ERGs support, oftentimes they are no longer a minority when it comes to being frontline. A lot of frontline employees are from these underrepresented communities. So they don't necessarily feel like they need that representation or like that safe space because they already probably, in a sense, have one. And they don't seek that. They don't seek that attention, especially for folks who have more so invisible affinities that they're kind of connecting with. A lot of the times there is a fear of people knowing that they're part of these communities when you're a frontline employee. Like, community is not oftentimes the resolution to the problem that you have when you're dealing with frontline employees. Speaking from experience, again, speaking from actually talking to frontline employees, not a case where literally, like I saw at one conference, I saw someone do an entire presentation on how to engage frontline employees. All right. Now, I was kind of fresh off of being a frontline employee when I saw this presentation at the conference, and I just could not help but ask, like, at the end when they did Q&A, I was like, did you talk to any frontline employees when you created this strategy? And they like stumbled a lot, and they were like, no. And I was like, okay. I just will never forget that because it was clear to me that they didn't talk to any frontline employees. Anyway, I'm done rambling. Does that have anything to do with the question? A little bit. The point is, understand what you're solving for. This way, you might realize that community is not the solution. Part 2 of that answer, oftentimes you do actually have more global engagement than you think. This one's talking about a company that just launched offices in different areas, but let's just say hypothetically, you've already had offices in different areas and you do have some participation in those different areas. What I would say is you want to make sure that when you're thinking about success in these different areas, that it is proportionate to your company size, is what I will say. So for instance, if your company size is 75% US, 25% EMEA, all right? When you're thinking about success, in this case, from an ERG program, at minimum, because then, like I said, you really should factor in the fact that community just might not be the solution for EMEA. But nevertheless, you should not expect a 50-50 participation from members US and EMEA. Like, you shouldn't expect 50% of your ERG's membership to be from EMEA. It's not proportionate to your community. You should expect 25% of your ERG program's membership to be in EMEA. Like, that's just a simple fact to start off with. All right, let me say this in a different way just so you all can hear me here. If you have 1,000 people that are part of your ERG program and your company has, let's say, 5,000 people in total, and 2,500 of them are in EMEA. So again, actually, no, that would be half. 1,250 of those are in EMEA. Long story short, I'm getting kind of nerdy with the numbers. A quarter of the company's employee base is in EMEA. You have 1,000 ERG members. How some people would think is they would think that 500 of our members need to be from EMEA and 500 from the US, like breaking it down like that. Or that is not even proportionate to your company's numbers. Your company is 75% US. So realistically, what you're trying to get to is 75% of your membership being from US. That does not mean 75% of your employee US population, but 75% of your membership. So 750 members you would expect to be US, and probably about 250 EMEA folks would be members, which would be about a fifth of EMEA. I don't know if that's making sense. I get really nerdy with the numbers. Fun fact, I used to be like a real math nerd. But long story short, you should be expecting Like if you were to do a pie chart of your US representation versus EMEA, 75 US, 25 EMEA, that at minimum should be what you're shooting for when it comes to your ERG representation chart. Again, 75% US, 25 EMEA. But honestly, again, I will just reiterate that might not be the solution for EMEA. So it's okay if most of your members are from the US. I'm like, this is a conversation I have to have a lot with folks, and I'm still figuring out on how to say it simply. But I've had to change a lot of executives' thinking on this when it comes to success in different regions for the ERG program.